News Channel. Live, this is Beattie and Newman.
Oh, welcome to Beattie and Newman. Now, I'm in Sydney and Campbell, well, he's in Brisbane. So, Campbell, how are you?
G'day, mate. Good to see you.
You're looking well?
You're looking fantastic too, as always. Yeah, you had a good weekend, did you?
I did.
See a few tweets at the... I saw quite a crowd of people you were with at the footy the other night.
Oh, absolutely. Well, it was a great weekend of NRL. You and I might talk a little bit about the Cowboys and the Broncos a bit later.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Few surprises,
A few surprises indeed. Well, tonight we've got a great show, Campbell and I. We've got Steve Dixon first, who, as you know, is the leader of One Nation in Queensland. And for all our national audience, let me just say to you, in the nicest possible way, of course, One Nation could well determine who wins the next Queensland election. As you know, they've now got senators and they contribute to the balance of power in the Senate. Will they do the same in Queensland? That's the real test. So we're joined tonight by Steve Dixon, who's the leader of One Nation in the state parliament and a member. Steve, welcome.
G'day Peter, g'day Campbell, how are you both going? Talking to two ex-premiers, I feel like I'm standing before greatness.
Well, you know, the good thing about
Flattery will get we everywhere.
You know, the good thing about that, Steve, neither of us are going to argue with you. Steve, getting to the heart of all this, you were an LNP minister in Campbell's government, and I've got no doubt he'll come to that in a minute. If we come to the issue, we look at the latest polls and you've got 37% primary vote for the Labor Party and I think it's 31% for the LNP and about 34%, I'm sorry, for the LNP, and you've got 15 for One Nation. You could, in some of the regions, pick up seats. You could, in fact, determine who wins. So if that does happen, Steve, what will you do? The Labor Party said they won't form a government with you or take your support. Will you support an LNP government on the floor or will you want to be part of a coalition?
Peter, I'd be happy to work with any members of Parliament as long as it's to the benefit of all Queensland. I think, you know, we are way beyond the two-party system, and I think there's going to be a hell of a change right here in Queensland, as there was in France, as there was in the United States. And as far as polling goes, I wouldn't pay a cracker for it because I don't think you're getting value for money.
Let me ask you the follow-on question then, Steve, because that's diplomatic. You keep that up and you get a diplomatic post. Steve, the other question, though, which you will have to deal with before the election, and you know every journo in Australia is going to ask you this, what is your strategy with preferences? Because some seats you won't come first, you'll come third, some you'll come second, and that will determine whether you win or you determine who wins. What will your strategy be on preferences, and have you spoken to the LNP or the Labor Party or the Katter Party about preferences?
Well, it's a complicated question and the answer is probably going to be just as complicated. We've made a point already that we're not running against the Katter Party in Queensland, the two Katter Party candidates, that's Robbie and Shane Knuth. We've also made a decision we're not running against Joan Miller and Bundamba, and I'll be announcing tomorrow about an LNP member that we're not running against, so there's 4 seats taken out of the equation to start with. There'll be a lot of things happening in Queensland, Peter. The Labor Party have said they're going to put us last. Tim Nichols has said that he wants to put Steve Dixon last in Buderim. So there is a lot of the process we've got to go through at the moment to decide where we're going to go, but we're looking on a seat-by-seat basis at the moment.
Okay.
So, Steve, let's start to talk now about some of the issues, the policy matters. So, just as an overview, where's Queensland going wrong at the moment? What's wrong with Queensland? What needs to be done? And what would the One Nation contribution be to getting the place on the right track?
Campbell, the first word that comes to mind is energy. I think we all know the biggest issue facing Queenslanders at the moment is it's an energy crisis and it's going to get a whole lot worse. We don't want to end up like South Australia. I mean, renewables is a wonderful thing, but solar doesn't work so good at night, and when the wind's not blowing, wind power doesn't work so well either. We need good baseload energy, and we're the only party in this country that's prepared to come out and say we want to build a coal-fired power station, we want the government to own it. And I asked the question of the Premier just last Thursday in Parliament, and my question was very clear. The LNP and the ALP voted together in the last budget for 50% renewables. Will the Premier build a coal-fired power station now or if elected after the next election? And the answer was very simple. No, we won't build a coal-fired power station. And yes, we are supporting 50% renewable energy targets. That means one thing to me: the cost of energy will go up by at least 50% in no time at all.
Well, Steve, just to then take you up on part of that, but hasn't Nichols, as leader of the opposition, said that he wants to build a coal-fired power station?
Campbell, Tim Nichols has said that, but the Prime Minister has said no, and I think we all know this in politics. If the leader of the federal government, which is the leader of the LNP in this state, Malcolm Turnbull, and then you've got Tim Nichols, if they can't agree on what sort of energy they want to provide to the people of Australia and Queensland, I don't know how they're going to run the state of Queensland.
So Campbell asked you the issue about power, and that's obviously one of the major policies you're going to run on, and I understand why you'll do that, because it'll obviously have certain attractions in regional Queensland, particularly in the north. But let's follow up on Campbell's questions. What are the other policy matters that mean importance to One Nation? What will you campaign on? Give us, say, your 4 big policy priorities after energy.
Very, very clearly, Peter, immediately we want to kill the Cross River Rail project. It's $5.4 billion that doesn't need to be spent until 2036. Infrastructure Australia has said that this project is not needed until that time, and that will save the people of Brisbane 8 minutes in travel. It's good for Jackie Trad, but it's not good for the rest of Queensland. So with that money, we want to build the coal-fired power station that I've spoken about. We want to put $1.95 billion into water infrastructure in North Queensland, Townsville, coming down to Rockhampton and in between. We want to do the Sunshine Coast Rail system, which is $850 million, and we want to get dollar for dollar with the feds. And we can throw a bit of money at other projects, but the real key to this prize is dropping energy by 20% in Queensland. We have Ergon, Powerlink and CS Energy. The state government is taking $1.3 billion a year from those energy providers, putting it into consolidated revenue. We're going to tell them to keep it and drive the cost down by 20%, and to fill that gap, we'll actually change the way procurement is done in Queensland. And I think both of you would be very well aware of this. There are preferred contractors in the state, and I'll use school roofs as an example. Every year we have 3 contractors getting the work for procurement for schools. They clip the ticket on the way through for 20%. They subcontract their work out. I want to get rid of those providers. If we cannot have our own people within the Queensland government to do procurement and save us 20% across the board, I'll walk to Burke naked.
Steve, you're clearly not a Labor man, because you were with the LNP during my time and prior to me being involved in state politics. But then you jumped ship to join One Nation. Do you want to elaborate on how you feel both the Labor Party and the LNP, I mean, clearly you have a view, how are they letting the place down? Do you want to talk a bit more about that?
Well, I do. I mean, what's happened, and this happens over time, I think both the major parties have absolutely lost touch with people, as major businesses have lost touch with people. It's something that happens every few years, and we're experiencing that right here in Australia, and particularly here in Queensland. When the Labor Party and the LNP went to vote at the last budget, and this demonstrates it better than anything else, the Labor Party voted 42 votes for the budget. The LNP voted 41 votes against the budget. The 3 members up the back, myself and the 2 catters, we voted against the budget. That meant 44 votes to 42 votes, which means there should have been an election called the next morning because we'd cut off supply. The LNP changed their vote, but on a regular basis, they are voting with the Labor Party, and they've changed their vote from a no to a yes vote. So that means they are linked in as one. They both supported registration increases. They both supported 50% renewable targets. They both supported the Cross River Rail. And I think this is what everyday Queenslanders are seeing. There is no difference between the 2 parties. They have merged and they're basically acting as one. And that disappoints me, and I think it disappoints all Queenslanders.
Steve, getting to the point you made before where Tim Nichols has said that he will put you last in preferences and LNP preferences, what does that mean for your seat, and can you get re-elected?
Peter, I don't think that there is a safe seat in Queensland. I think, as you touched on earlier, One Nation preferences are going to make a big difference right throughout the state of Queensland, and it's no different in my seat or no different in Tim Nichols' seat or no different in Anastasia's seat. I mean, think about it. If we decide to preference against the sitting member, which is a hypothetical at the moment, that would cause a whole lot of problems for that particular individual. as it will cause problems for me. I'm no different to any other member of parliament, and I think this will be one of the most unique elections, and I think both of you gentlemen are going to have a ton of fun on polling night. I'm going to be out there working my backside off till 6 o'clock, but yous will be there laughing at the rest of us.
We're looking forward to it.
Yeah. Well, Steve, just then to have a look inwards into One Nation, I got a view. I think Peter probably agree. The party as a whole's had probably a horror start to the year. Last year was really good, but you had the lead into the WA election. I think your overall leader, Pauline Hanson, had a few missteps going into that. There was a lot of internal strife. You also had problems with candidates throwing mud and leaving the party, etc. How have you sorted yourself out? Surely that has hurt the brand, albeit perhaps not as badly in Queensland. Have you sorted yourself out? How can people be confident about a vote to One Nation isn't a vote for chaos?
Campbell, very, very clearly, we're no different to any other party in Queensland. I mean, what we're doing is making sure we don't get members of parliament or members into the parliament that are going to disrespect the people of Queensland. We saw it with Scott Driscoll. We saw it with Gordon Nuttall. You know, there are people who have got into the House who should never have been in the House. We're knocking them out before they actually get the potential to get into the House. And have we had some stumbles along the way? Absolutely. But I think it's like anything in life. You stumble, you get up and you keep moving forward. That's exactly what we've done. I think we've got some fantastic policies, of which I have a document here that has been out since April. A lot of the media haven't got a hold of it yet. And there's many, many things like, you might see that one there, no asset sales. Yep. We've got many, many policies in here, and they're very, very good. A citizens-based referendum, where at the moment the country's talking about same-sex marriage. What we should be doing is always letting the people have a say, like they do in Switzerland, they do in many other countries in the world. Take those hand grenades away, let the public of Australia and Queensland have a say, and get rid of those things like daylight savings, same-sex marriage, euthanasia. Let the public have a say on those issues and let the politicians do what they should do, and that's deliver positive outcomes for all the people they represent. And I think that's what's lacking in this country today.
Steve, how important will Pauline Hanson herself be in your campaign? I mean, I know the party's Pauline Hanson, One Nation. I assume she'll be out campaigning vigorously across the state with you. Will you be, if you like, a duo in your campaigning style? Have you worked that out yet?
Peter, there are people who resonate with the Australian public, as yourself and as Campbell has done in the past and Pauline is doing right now, right across this country. I think without a hesitation, Pauline would be the most recognised politician in this state, if not in this country. And I believe the people of Queensland are looking for somebody to follow. I think when we reflect in 10 to 20 years' time, people are going to look back and they're going to go, this lady was a true patriot to the people of Queensland and the people of Australia, and I think they're going to follow her in droves. And I think this election is going to be a very, very exciting election, and I hope we're very successful, at the least to gain the balance of power. If we can do better than that, that would be a great outcome.
Well, Steve, on that issue of winning seats, you obviously think you're going to win a few. Do you want to talk about where One Nation could pick up those seats? You're prepared to talk about that this evening?
Campbell, I think we could be successful in a lot of areas. I think Sam Cox will do very well in North Queensland. I think Scotty Bannon will do very well in the seat of Logan. We have a fantastic gentleman running down at Capalaba. I mean, there are seats all over the state. We should do well outside of Brisbane, but I'm not going to be shocked. I think this election, as you saw in 2012 when the LNP won a number of seats, and then again how that pendulum turned again in 2015, and I think it is about to swing pretty concisely towards One Nation in the 2017 election. And I let that slip out then, didn't I? I think it will be this year.
Steve, I think you're not alone on that thought. Steve, what effect do you think the Malcolm Roberts citizenship issue will have if the High Court finds against your senator? And if it does, now that he's relinquished his UK citizenship, or at least that's clear, will he just simply be re-nominated and put back into the Senate?
Peter, I think we'll wait and see what comes out of the High Court. I think, Barnaby Joyce may have a problem. There's a whole lot of people that are going to go before the High Court, and I think maybe the sleeper in the room might be is all of those people that are getting their pensions from the past that may be dual citizens. If they start to look at them, gee, we've got some big trouble then.
Yeah, well, that's Steve, an interesting question, of course.
Yeah, no, Steve, I just want to go back to this sort of thing of the trouble you had earlier on this year, because I'm not quite sure you really answered my question. I might ask it a bit differently. The WA election, you had your overall leader, Pauline Hanson, saying one thing in WA about GST and saying something different in Queensland. And, mate, let's not beat around the bush. People noticed. What's the party learnt from the WA election experience? What things went wrong? Are you prepared to talk about that? And what have you learnt from that?
Campbell, it's a very straightforward answer, and I'll give that to you. The party was in place for 51 days leading into that election campaign. I think it was rushed, and particularly relating to the GST question. The senator was over in Western Australia, and as the Liberal Party has done over in Western Australia, they're asking for a greater share of the GST, and I'm not going to blame them for doing that. They get a pretty poor cut of the pie over there, but as the leader of One Nation in Queensland, I'm always going to ask for more. That's my job, and it is the Western Australian people, it's their job to try to get more over there. It could have been spoken about so much better. It wasn't. We've gone through a process where there was a deal done with the Liberal Party to do preferences over there. That's not happening here. There is a whole lot of differences between Western Australia and the election in Queensland. This is Pauline Hanson's home state. One Nation has been around for some time. I've gone through the candidate selection process over here, and I think we've got some fantastic candidates. As I talked about earlier, we've got some great policy, citizens-based referendum. We're going to rebadge the police service to the police force in Queensland. We're going to treat law and order like it should be treated, with a pretty tough fist. There are so many things that have got to be done differently, and we have done that differently here in Queensland. So, short version is, I think they went in prematurely in Western Australia. I think we got it wrong. But, I mean, getting it wrong and winning the balance of power in the upper house, that's not a bad effort for a 51-day campaign.
Yeah. Steve, what about money and resources? Campbell asked you about your structure and candidates, and I think you've dealt with that. And of course, that's going to be one of the things that every journo will watch. As you know, they'll go and interview every one of your candidates again and again. But let me come to the issue of money. You can't run a campaign without money and good organisation. So where are you with both of those?
Peter, I'm really pleased that you asked that question, because I can now call on the Australian people live on Sky News to donate towards One Nation, because we need every cent we can get. The structure of the organisation is running pretty effectively for a very small party. We are not up there with the majors. The unions get a lot of money, and I know what goes on with the major shopping centres in Australia. We've got Coles and Woolworths. They've got a number of employees who pay about $75 million a year in union fees. I mean, a lot of that money goes towards the ALP, and we've got the LNP who gets a lot of money from big business. We don't have that luxury, of course. We are going out there on the bones of course, and we're going to do the best we can, because I think the Australian people and the Queensland people are behind us. And I think it's better to have human resources more so than it is to have financial resources. And in this case, let's see how the dice rolls.
All right. Well, unfortunately, we're out of time, Steve. So thank you for joining Campbell and I tonight. We would like to talk to you during the campaign, because we know that this is going to be, and you said it, one of the most exciting elections in Queensland's recent history, and it has federal ramifications, because there are One Nation senators in Canberra. There are now, as you say, balance of power in the upper house in Western Australia. If you end up with a balance of power in Queensland, then One Nation is here for the long haul. So thanks, Steve, and we'll talk again.
Thanks, Steve.
Now,
Peter.
Sorry, yes. We'll be back in a minute, because this month, September, is Alzheimer's month, and we want to talk to the head of the Brain Institute to find out the latest in research, so don't go away.